DocTalk is brought to you by Merck Animal Health, the science of healthier animals.
Hey folks, thanks for joining us today on the show here on DocTalk. As you can see with some of our guests, Dr. Nora Schrag is here, and we're going to talk about these little worms and germs and parasites and how we can prevent them in the cow herd, and working with your veterinarian to design a plan for parasite control, some of the symptoms, many different things. We're lucky to have Dr. Schrag on the show, so stay tuned.
As dependable as the sunrise, in dairy parlors, open pastures, on ranches and feed yards across America. A place where reputation is more than a name, where the science of healthier animals is a way of life. It's the responsibility that drives who we are and what we do. Every decision, every day. It's your livelihood and our responsibility.
Closed caption brought to you by AgriLabs, the perfect pairing of performance and value.
This segment brought to you by the new Hired Hand Portable Cow Sprayer. For more information, visit cowsprayer.com.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Folks, Dr. Nora Schrag, she's a veterinarian here at Kansas State University's College of Veterinary Medicine, a friend, a colleague, and someone who spends a lot of time working with cattle. And we're going to talk today about parasites and controlling parasites and some of the things that maybe we know, maybe we don't know. We've got some EBGBs here on the set. They're dead, formalin fixed. But let's talk about parasites and some of the symptoms.
So, we always think about one of the common things we do when we work cattle is to give them a dewormer of some sort. And we're really used to routinely doing it. And when you think about it, we've really only had good, safe drugs to deworm cattle for 50, maybe 70 years. And we've really gotten in the habit of using it, and maybe we're not as used to watching for the symptoms, and or we don't see the symptoms in cattle as often. So one thing we can see is that they can get really anemic, which might not present as diarrhea, it's just that their membranes get really white. So one way to see that is if you pull their eyelid down a little bit, you can see that whiteness there. And that's one thing that sometimes we don't think about first thing for a parasite, but that is certainly one thing it can do.
Absolutely, and when we get to that anemia, that means we're in pretty big trouble.
Absolutely. And also when we start seeing diarrhea, that means we're in pretty big trouble. Yeah. And so, those are the extremes. We really don't want to get there, which is why we give them drugs and routinely deworm them. But some of the things we can get before that are decreased weight gain and decreased immunity. And those are really hard to see. It's really hard to tell that that's affecting your cattle.
Yep, and I think that, we've been going through some different stuff on clinical diagnostics, and we seem to get ourselves pigeonholed in this pattern recognition. Okay, I've seen this, it's calf diarrhea, or it's,
Sure.
And we just automatically blow over the top of parasites.
Yeah, and I think we're really used to being able to use a drug and have it not be a problem, and we're maybe reaching the point where that's going to be not true in some situations. I know we had a group of 2-month-old calves that when we gave them their dewormer going to grass, they actually visibly saw some worms come out of those calves, which is real unusual.
Yeah.
We're not used to seeing that.
So subtle effects are going to be decreased performance, maybe some decreased conception rates, things that are going to be typically normal things that we measure just might be a little bit lacking or a little bit off, and
Sure.
then as you get to the more dramatic.
Yeah, and so, if you were really paying attention to weight gain and really managing that, maybe measuring once a month, you might notice a weight gain difference with a real minimal load. But until you get that extreme load of parasites, you're not going to notice those skinny cattle or those rough hair coats or diarrheas.
Okay. Well, obviously, when the next thing is to talk about the different worms, and we're going to take a break here, but you know, just as we got about 20, 30 seconds, it's really important to work with your veterinarian and talk about these parasite programs, isn't it?
Absolutely. And you working with your veterinarian is one of the most important things, because you see what's happening in the cattle and you can communicate that to them and they can help you out.
Great. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about some of these parasites, worms and germs that can cause some issues with your cows. More with Dr. Nora Schrag after these messages.
Some call it a come from behind victory, an unlikely win, a reversal of fortune, snatching victory from the jaws of defeat. This is our moment, our victory dance, because we choose confidence. We choose Zuprevo for BRD treatment. Ask your veterinarian to prescribe Zuprevo. Zuprevo is a fast-acting, long-lasting BRD treatment that you can count on to get the job done. Choose confidence. Choose Zuprevo from Merck Animal Health.
This Medford, New Jersey school bus runs on biodiesel, and so do these. In fact, all of these buses run on clean-burning biodiesel, which is great because the more we use biodiesel in our heavy-duty vehicles, the less carbon pollution in our air. Think how great it would be if more of our school buses ran on biodiesel. More biodiesel, less carbon pollution. More is less. Biodiesel, America's advanced biofuel.
Do your cattle struggle with pink eye, BRD, or another disease? Contact Newport Laboratories for a customized solution. Our custom-made vaccines are produced using the specific diseases found in your area. These USDA licensed vaccines offer potential cost savings on vaccine and labor. Contact your veterinarian or Newport Laboratories the next time your cattle are in need of a custom solution. Newport Laboratories custom-made vaccine, because every situation is different.
This segment brought to you by the new Hired Hand Portable Cow Sprayer. For more information, visit cowsprayer.com.
Hey folks, welcome back to DocTalk. Dr. Dan Thomson here with Dr. Nora Schrag. We're veterinarians here at Kansas State University's College of Veterinary Medicine. We work with beef cattle. Today we're talking about worms. We're talking about parasites that affect your herd, how we control them, which ones they are, and you have brought some things for show and tell.
Yeah, absolutely. So, these parasites are pretty fun to look at, and the one thing about parasites is they're all really different. So there's a bunch of different types of them, and these are actually what we would commonly call tapeworms. They're monesias, and they generally don't cause us too much trouble in cattle, and especially in older cattle. But if you got a whole bunch of them, they sure could cause some trouble. The ones we commonly see cause problems in cattle we call hot complex, and they're actually really, really tiny worms, and we'll get a close-up of these later, but you got to look pretty close to see them. And if you imagine these being in intestinal contents, if you had one die and you opened it up, you really have to look close. They look about like little hairs. And so it's easy to miss them. And especially if that animal's been dead for even a couple of hours, instead of being attached to the inside of the intestine, these worms will let go and they'll just be floating. And so it's almost impossible to find them.
So what are some of the different types of worms that we have?
So, we're talking mostly about what we call worms today, which are in a broader category called nematodes. And so that's where we get most of our problems in cattle. But remember that a lot of our drugs we give to deworm cattle also work on the insects or the arthropods like ticks and flies. And then we also have some protozoans like coccidia is one we'd be familiar with. And we don't have time to talk about all those today, but these are the ones that resemble worms. And just remember, in cattle, the real tiny ones are the ones that cause the biggest trouble for us.
So these would be the homunculus and ostratagia.
Yeah, yep, homunculus, ostratagia, and trichostrongylus. And these are actually homunculus, and it's hard to tell in these fixed ones, but if you see this fresh, they're called a barber pole worm, and they're actually, you can see they're intertwined, a white strand and a red strand. They're actually kind of pretty if you don't think about what they're doing to your critters.
So tell me what these are going to do in the when they, obviously we go through the life cycle, but tell me about the adult worms, where we're going to find them, what
Sure.
kind of damage do they do?
So most of the time we're going to find them in the abomasum, although it depends a little bit on the type of the worm. So some of them we'll find farther.
Hold on. The abomasum is the true stomach of the cow. When you think about the four chambers, we have the rumen, the reticulum, the omasum, and the omasum, or the abomasum. And the abomasum would be like our stomach, a hog's stomach, or that. So it's not in the rumen, not in the reticulum. It's going to be
right.
Okay. Just wanted to get us there.
Yep.
All right.
That's a good point to bring up. And a lot of times they do damage by burrowing into that mucosa, and so they can either suck blood and make them anemic, like we were talking about, so they turn pale and white, or they can just damage that mucosa so that it can't absorb nutrients, and that's where we get some of the loss of weight gain and that type of thing. Also, the diarrhea can come from that.
And they'll burrow in there, and they can stay in there.
Oh, they can stay in there a long time. It's, they have some mechanisms for doing that, and they can stay for at least a year. It just depends on whether they'll come out or not.
And I think that when we think about parasites, folks, we think more about, okay, our calf defecates something that looks like this, and if they don't, then they don't have worms.
Yeah, and that's not at all true.
And we can have different levels of infestation, but we'll get some close-ups of these, but it would be very difficult to see those.
Oh, yeah, and these are never, by the time they make it to the back of that animal, they're all digested up. You're never going to see these unless you open them actually up.
All right, well, we're going to take a break. When we come back, Dr. Schrag is going to start to pull out some of the big guns that can take care of these and treat your cows for parasites.
Say this is a calf that's been run through the chute a few too many times. Going through the chute stresses cattle, causing them not to eat like they should. Luckily, Pyramid 5 plus Presponse SQ provides proven protection against key respiratory diseases in a single shot, with just one trip through the chute. Talk to your veterinarian about Pyramid 5 plus Presponse SQ, and soon your calves will relax and eat like a whole different animal.
It takes vision, dedication, hard work. It takes knowing who you can trust. At Zinpro Corporation, we have more industry-endorsed research behind our trace minerals than any other company. Proof that our patented performance minerals help improve overall animal health and performance. Lots of companies make claims. At Zinpro, we generate results.
If my calves start healthy and stay healthy, I've got a good shot at making money. That is why I trust Clostrix. It gives my calves the protection they need until their own immune systems kick in.
Calf raisers trust Colostrix colostrum supplements. Colostrix is USDA licensed and proven effective. When your money is on the line, trust Colostrix.
Valley Vet Supply is devoted to providing information and professional quality products at reasonable prices.
Valley Vet Supply.
Hey folks, welcome back to DocTalk. Dr. Dan Thomson here with Dr. Nora Schrag. You can see I'm getting older. Got to use this now to see things that we write, or especially to pick up some of these little boogers and see them. But we're talking about parasites, and we've got the symptoms, we've isolated the problems. Now let's talk about some of the tools that we have to control or treat.
Sure. So when we're talking about the worm parasites, we basically only have 3 different classes of drugs to treat those. So one of maybe the most common one is macrocytic lactones, and so that would be what we commonly think of as ivermectin or Ivomec. But there's several different versions of that drug, but they're all in the same class, and so they all work real similarly. Then we also have what we call the white wormers, which those are really literally white. They're the ones you give orally, and those there's 3 main ones that we talk about, or that we have available to us here. That'd be like Panacur or Synantic or Valbazin.
Yep.
And so those, they can be real handy and they kill the worms pretty quickly, but you have to give them orally. And so some people think that's a little frustrating. And then the last class we only have one drug available to us in it, and that's levamisole. And it has been on and off the market.
Yep, and so when we're thinking about control, levamisole, but really it's down to two that we're using the most of.
Right.
We're using the macrocytic lactones, which it's really hard for me to say macrocytic lactones. I just say the ivermectins or avermectins.
Sure.
And then the white dewormers are our fenbendazole or bendazoles, right?
Yeah, and the white dewormers, we only give them orally, but if you think about the avermectins, most of those have an injectable form and a pour-on form. And so the pour-on is really convenient and gets used really commonly. It also has some advantages in that if you're going for some of those ectoparasites, or the ticks and flies and things that live on the outside of the cow, pouring on sometimes is better for those. But if we're really thinking about these little worms that live inside, we get a big fluctuation in dose, and it's hard to get enough consistently in a cow when you're pouring it on sometimes to go after these little guys.
Yeah, and I almost exclusively, unless somebody has a pretty good reason for ectoparasites, I'll use the injectable form
to get
our
worms.
internal
Absolutely.
parasites. We have some people out there too on feeder cattle and things that'll prescribe to dual therapy, right? The
Absolutely.
Injectable and the white
Yep.
dewormers.
And so one of our challenges coming up is we're finding some more resistance to these. And so, we've done a lot of research, and for a while we thought, well, if we use 2 drugs at once, then we're going to build resistance faster. And actually, that's not the case. We found if we rotate drugs, so if we use one and then we use the other one and then we use another one, we build resistance really quickly. But if we actually use a combination at the right time and at the right dose, we can actually decrease the rate of that resistance if we use it in conjunction with some other strategies. So we can maybe talk about those later. But
You bet. Well, I think whenever we're talking about these, work with your local veterinarian.
Absolutely.
They're going to know the more prevalent parasites. They're going to know if there is a resistance pattern. But again, if there is a resistance pattern, remember this. We only got 2 products,
right.
really. So,
yeah, and something else we didn't talk about, and a reason to really engage your veterinarian, is a lot of factors can change how these drugs work. So your animal's age is going to determine their resistance to it. The genetics are going to play a role, and so there's a lot of different things that you have to take into account when choosing a drug.
You bet. When we come back, we'll wrap up on putting it all together on parasite control with Dr. Nora Schrag.
Did you know long-range planning through the checkoff can help keep your business profitable? To successfully pass on cattle operations from one generation to the next, it's important to promote beef and keep farms and ranches profitable. Your beef checkoff helps do that.
I'm Jeff Mingus. I'm from southeast Arizona, where we have a family cattle ranch. I've been in the cattle business my entire life. I can remember the onset of the checkoff program, and when the Beef Council decided to use checkoff dollars to create additional demand for the chuck and the round. And I think that created a significant increase in the price of our product, and I think the beef checkoff has been beneficial for our operation.
So we moved to an area on a national backcountry byway, and because of that there's a lot of tourists, and they'll stop in sometimes, and we've had a lot of people come out to the ranch. So we take that as a real opportunity to educate people about the beef industry. So we built this catering business when I retired a few years ago. I've used beef checkoff recipes over the last 20 years, but when you're really producing that for the public, it takes on a whole new meaning.
As a young rancher, there was a lot for me to learn when I came back to the ranch. I feel as if the beef checkoff gave me additional tools I needed. The beef quality assurance program has helped teach me how to handle cattle in a more effective manner, a way that's the most beneficial to the cow and the most efficient for the producer.
And I'm really proud to be able to say that the beef industry is reaching out to the consumer. I have this one on my website, Gazpacho Steak Salad. It's very popular. And this is one that millennials like because it's quick, it's fast, and they don't have a lot of time to prepare. And this one has been really popular with men because you ask them, do you like to grill? And of course they say yes, and say, well, here's just a couple of recipes, and they grab them.
We feel really blessed that we have one of our sons, Ben, wanting to carry on the ranching tradition, so he'll be a 5th generation cattle rancher in my family.
Still using ineffective fly tags on your cattle? It's time to eliminate fleas, ticks, flies, lice, and parasites, and at the same time, give them a shiny coat, making them more valuable. One fly tag can cost $2.50, but you can do this all for about a nickel a head. Introducing the Cow Sprayer, designed and built in the U.S. The Cow Sprayer is portable, solar-powered, and comes with a 25 or 40-gallon tank. Eliminate parasites for about 5 cents a head with the Cow Sprayer. Cowsprayer.com.
It's easy to spot the man who uses Synanthic. With lower volume and less waste, Synanthic steps up your deworming routine. Get more deworming with less dewormer at Synanthic.com.
Beringer Ingelheim Vetmedica Inc. knows the importance of beef quality assurance and asks you to step up and get certified. Go to bqa.org for details.
This segment is brought to you by the Beef Quality Assurance Program and the Kansas Beef Council, improving animal care and beef safety for more than 20 years.
Hey folks, welcome back to DocTalk. Dr. Dan Thomson here with Dr. Nora Schrag. She's a friend and colleague. We're veterinarians here at K-State's College of Vet Med. Having a great conversation about parasites, and when we think about the symptoms, the big thing is to make sure you deworm your cows.
Yeah.
And make sure that you deworm your calves at weaning, and that you're using products and paying attention. It's a lot of times when people brand or they run cattle through before turnout and we decide not to deworm. That is something I think is a major mistake. And you need to make sure you deworm your cows.
It can sure really affect your bottom line, and as much as deworm your cows, maybe talk with your veterinarian about exactly when and how. Because getting the timing right, depending on your geographic location and the weather patterns in that area, can really make a big difference on how effective that drug is going to be in controlling it.
Yeah, and so walk me through some of the things you as a veterinarian. You know, I got some cows that are going to turnout. What are some things that are going through your mind?
Sure. So I'm going to think about where they're going to get turned out. Are they going to get turned out on low river bottom ground, because the worm burden there might be really different than if they're going to get turned out on a hilltop where we've got lots of good drainage, things like that. And the other thing that makes a huge difference with worm load is stocking density. And so if we have a worm problem, we can deworm all we want. If our stocking density for that pasture is not appropriate, we're going to build resistance really quickly. That dewormers, we're not going to get as much return out of that investment on dewormer, and we can create a lot of trouble for ourselves. But if we really manage our pasture appropriately and manage that stocking density, then it can really help us.
I think that's the reason why, right, that we see this in our small ruminant friends, because we overgraze and we never rotate pastures. Well, not never, but it's intensive grazing, and they're always in the same area on small paddocks, and we just constantly reinfect the ground.
Sure, sometimes we get that. I mean, with our small ruminant friends, we certainly have a resistance problem. So even if you perfectly manage the pasture, and they've done some studies where we, let that pasture sit or rotate and even let it sit for 6 months, we can still have a problem. So
being careful not to
being
overgraze.
Careful to just keep ahead of that. We don't want to get to that point where no drugs work.
Yep. What types of drugs, combinations, things that people should be thinking about?
So when you're talking with your veterinarian, it's important to tell them, where these cattle are going, when's the next time you're going to catch them. We're going to deworm based on when the worms are there, but sometimes the ideal time to deworm isn't when we have access to those cattle. And so we'll just communicate what's going to happen in our production system, and then your veterinarian might say, oh, if we shift this by a couple of weeks, it's going to change it. Or we might say, well, this is the best we can do. We're going to take that into account. But really, nobody does this, but the ideal time to kill these parasites and decrease pasture load is 6 weeks after turnout.
And you can have, work with your veterinarian too, to take some fecal floats or take some
Absolutely.
fecal samples.
And that's one of the things that we, can really tell us, are we using the right drug? Is it working the way we think it should be working? Do we need to add another one? And we've gotten a lot more efficient. It used to be pretty expensive. We had to run, 15 samples and then come back in 2 weeks and run 15 again. We found that we can take 15 samples and combine them into 4 and run that and run 4 again. And it's a lot easier and cheaper.
Thanks for being on the
Sure.
show today. Great information, folks, managing parasites in your cow herd. Remember to always work with your local veterinarian. If you want to find out what we do here on DocTalk, you can find us on the web at www.doctalktv.com. I'm Dan Thomson here with Dr. Nora Schrag. Thanks for watching us today on DocTalk, and we'll see you down the road. Closed caption brought to you by AgriLabs, the perfect pairing of performance and value.
For more information about this program or previous programs, go to DocTalkTV.com. DocTalk was brought to you by Merck Animal Health, the science of healthier animals.